In geospatial data visualization, maps are powerful storytelling tools. However, a map without clear annotations or labels is like a book without titles or chapter markers. While the story might still be there, it's harder to understand, interpret, or appreciate. In this lesson, we place special emphasis on the importance of annotation and labeling in maps. Proper annotation transforms even the simplest visualizations into informative guides to enable viewers to quickly grasp complex spatial data. And with precise labeling, areas of interest can be immediately identified, facilitating a clearer comprehension of the data's narrative. Now, with that being said, let's get started. On your screen, you'll see a list of learning objectives. If you like, you can pause this video and read through it. However, we will go over the list at the end. Before getting started, let's first load in the packages we're going to need for this lesson. The first package we're going to need is Malaria Atlas, alongside ggplot2, Geodata, dplyr, tidyr, here, readr, sf, and patchwork. And with this options function, wherein the sci_pen argument is set equal to 100,000, this simply disables a scientific notation and allow for clearer numeric displays. So if we run all that, since our packages are all loaded and we've disabled scientific notation, we're ready to begin with data preparation. Now, before diving into any visualization or analysis, it's essential to load and pre-process our data. And this includes reading in dataset, merging related information, and filtering out unnecessary or irrelevant entries. First off, we'll first read in our geographical shapefile data. So if you remember from the previous lesson, with our SF package, we have an st read function, which is going to read in our shapefile. In this case, we will once again be working with the malaria data sourced from the Nigeria Epi Review in 2022, which you previously saw in the first chloropleth map video. And let's run that to load in our geographical shapefile. Next, we will load in our data related to malaria cases in the different states of Nigeria. In this case, this data set will be our attribute data. Now, as a reminder, attribute data refers to the data containing the values you want to visualize on the map, such as disease prevalence, population density, and so on. Once again, in reference to the first choropleth map video, we will filter out the water body entries from our nga admin1 shapefile that we just loaded. So within our filter function, we're going to indicate our nga admin1 shapefile, and in our name1 column, we're going to drop all the entries of water body. So that's fine. Next, we want to combine the geographical boundaries data with malaria cases using names as a reference. So using the left join function, we're once again going to be combining our geographical boundaries data with malaria cases using the by argument within our left join function. And when we want to combine it using state names as reference, so within our malaria cases data set, we're going to indicate the state names column or state name to be equal to the name one column within our nga admin1 shapefile. And the last function that you see here, as a reminder, this simply converts our file into a format suitable for geospatial visualizations. And we'll just go ahead and run the whole code chunk. Here, we're simply narrowing down our dataset into specific columns, mainly the state names, the malaria cases from various years, and the geographical boundaries of these states as indicated in the geometry column. In the next step, we're simply loading the data indicating the population of different states or regions in Nigeria. So in addition to our malaria dataset, we also have a second attribute dataset which indicates the population in Nigeria. And let's go ahead and run that. Now, one of our last steps is to merge the population data with our malaria cases in order to have an enriched data set. Now, this combined data allows for more comprehensive visualizations and analyses, such as calculating incidence rates or assessing trends relative to population size. Now, again, with our left join function, using our malaria 2 dataset, which we created up above here, and in this step, we simply just selected the columns we would like for our analyses. We're going to combine that with our population Nigeria dataset by state name. And as a last reminder, the STASSF function that you see in the last line is simply converting our dataset into a suitable format for geospatial visualization. Lastly, in data preparation, you sometimes need to address aesthetic concerns with labeling small areas. So if we look at the malaria 3 dataset, specifically the state name column, you can see that we have an entry that's labeled Federal Capital Territory. Once again, sometimes we need to label small areas on maps. Therefore, we need to modify the labels before plotting. Now, we can do this by creating a new column for the modified state names or by directly changing the state name column within the malaria 3 dataset. Given that the regions in question has a small surface area, the full name of Federal Capital Territory may overflow its borders. So to adjust the name to simply capital, we're going to use the if-else function, which you may remember from previous lessons. Our first argument is going to be our dataset of malaria 3, specifying for the state name column. In the first argument, we're going to place the original name of one of our territories, which is Federal Capital Territory, and here we're going to indicate the name that we would like it replaced with. So this is going to be the new state name. And finally, we're going to indicate our malaria 3 dataset, once again specifying for state name. And so let's run that line. And if we check our malaria 3 state name column once again, we see that now we no longer have our Federal Capital Territory state. However, we do have a state simply called capital. So therefore, we were successful in addressing potential aesthetic concerns in labeling small areas. Now that our data preparation steps are finished, we can now build a simple choropleth map. As in the previous video, we'll be using a choropleth map to visualize the distribution of malaria cases across different regions of Nigeria for the year 2021. So if you remember, using our malaria 3 dataset within our ggplot, we're going to indicate our cases 2021 column within the malaria 3 dataset. However, as an additional step, we're going to divide these cases by 1000 in order to properly scale it. And within our scale fill continuous function, because we want to use a continuous color scale, we're going to indicate green for low cases and red for high cases. And we get our following output, which is a simple choropleth map. Before moving forward, let's go over the following code chunk to explain in detail how we created the following choropleth map. So within our first line of ggplot data equals malaria 3, this simply initiates a ggplot object using the malaria 3 dataset. Within our second line of geomsf and aesthetic function, this adds the geographical data from the malaria 3 dataset and then fills each region based on the number of malaria cases in 2021, scaled down by a factor of 1,000. As you see, we divided the cases 2021 by 1,000. And this effectively represents the number of cases per 1,000 people. Next, the labs function specifies the title of the plot, which is Nigeria malaria distributed cases in 2021, and also the label for the color scale. So here in fill, we indicated the title to be cases per 1,000, which we can easily see down here in our choropleth map. Our scale continuous function applies a continuous color scale where regions with fewer cases are colored green and regions with more cases are colored red. And finally, our last line, which contains the theme void function, just applies a minimal theme for better visualization of the map. What the theme void function does is remove axes text, ticks, and other non-data to emphasize the map. Therefore, in this code chunk, we were able to create a clear view of how many malaria cases are distributed across Nigeria in 2021, with the color intensity indicating the magnitude of cases in each region. For now, it's time for our first practice question. With the concepts we just learned, we would like for you to update the data mapping in the geomsf function to reflect malaria cases for the year 2015. Furthermore, we would like for you to adjust the title in the labs function to indicate that the visualization pertains to 2015. And finally, we would like you to change the color gradient in the fill continuous function to transition from blue to yellow. Take your time to fully understand what is being asked, pause your screen, and indicate your answer in your own RMD file. Moving forward, when analyzing disease data, it's often useful to look beyond raw case numbers and focus on rates, particularly incidence rates. Now, the incidence rate provides a normalized measure that can account for differing population sizes across regions, making comparisons more meaningful. Let's first take a look at incidence rate and truly understand what it is. Now, incidence of a disease is the cornerstone of epidemiological research. It quantifies the number of new cases of a disease that occur within a specific time frame, typically a year, relative to a population at risk. Mathematically, we can see it as incidence equals the number of new cases during the time period divided by the overall population at risk at the start of the period. Keeping this in mind, we can take a look at the incidence of malaria in different states of Nigeria for the year 2021. Specifically, we'll compute the incidence rate by dividing the number of new malaria cases in 2021 by the population of each state from the last available consensus in 2019. Let's first fill in our code in order to create our choropleth map, and then we'll delve deeper into the details of each line to get a full comprehensive overview. So first, within our geomsf function, in our fill argument, this is where we're going to be calculating our incidence rate. To do that, we will divide our cases from 2021 by the population of each state from the last available census in 2019. In the last argument, we're simply going to indicate a 2. Within our geomsf text function, which also contains our string wrap function, we would like our state names to be wrapped. In this argument, we'll indicate 1 with a size of 2. And finally, within our scale fill continuous function, we're going to indicate green for low incidence and red for high incidence areas. And let's run this following code to get our choropleth map. And now we see that we've created a choropleth map displaying the incidence rate of malaria in Nigerian states for the year 2021. And each state is filled with a color representing its incidence rate with text labels indicating the state name and a color legend indicating the range of incidence rates from low to high. But as promised, let's go back to the code chunk in order to see what each part of the code does and how we created this beautiful choropleth map. Well, our ggplot function, once again, initiates a new ggplot object using the malaria-3 dataset. This particular line adds a layer to the plot with the geom_sf function, which is used for plotting spatial data. Now it maps the fill aesthetic to the ratio of cases in 2021 divided by the population in 2019. And our last argument of 2 simply indicates that this should be rounded to 2 decimal places. And overall, this will determine the color intensity of each state based on the incidence rate that we calculated in this line. Now, this line adds text labels to the plot using the geom_sf text function. It maps the label aesthetic to state name, which contains the name of each state, using the string wrap function to wrap long state names to a character width of 1 for better visualization. And the size argument, as you see here, sets the size of the text to 2. This line sets the plot's title as Nigeria Malaria Incidence in 2021 and the legend title as Incidence, which we see below. Our scale fill continuous function defines a continuous color scale for the fill aesthetic, ranging from low incidence, which is green, to high incidence being red. And finally, again, the theme void function applies a minimalistic theme to the plot, removing unnecessary background elements to focus solely on the map and the data itself. Hopefully, you were able to understand the different components into making a choropleth map such as this. This visualization that we created is particularly useful in that it offers an immediate grasp of the malaria situation in Nigeria, and it reveals areas of high incidence, as we see in the capital, that might need more focused public health interventions. In addition to incidence rate, understanding the change in the number of disease cases over time can provide insights into the effectiveness of interventions, the progression of the disease, and areas where increased resources might be needed. In this context, we're going to visualize the percentage increase in malaria cases from 2015 to 2021 across different states in Nigeria. But before doing so, we first need to compute the increase rate. Keeping in mind our example up above, the increase rate for each state is computed as the number of cases in 2021 minus cases in 2015 divided by the cases in 2015 multiplied by 100%. Now, this formula provides a percentage growth or decrease in malaria cases from 2015 to 2021. Now that we've seen how to compute our increase rate, we can delve into the code that accomplishes this visualization. Once again, we'll first complete the code within our code chunk to create our choropleth map before going in depth line by line to see what happened to create that choropleth map. First, here we're going to calculate our increase rate, and following the formula that we saw up above, we're just going to indicate cases from 2021 here, subtracting the cases from 2015. That's again divided by cases in 2015, multiplied by 100, which was already here. Within our geom_sf function, we're going to fill the regions based on increase rate which was calculated up above here. And within our string wrap paste 0 function, we would like our increase rate pasted together with a percentage symbol. Let's go ahead and run this code chunk. So here we see that the resulting map allows us to quickly identify regions with significant growth in malaria cases over the selected period. And through this visualization, you can pinpoint regions where malaria is on the rise and potentially allocate resources more effectively. Now that we've seen our resulting choropleth map, let's go back to our code chunk and look at each line in more detail to fully understand what happened. So in these lines, we create a new column called increase rate in the malaria 3 dataset. And this column calculates the percentage increase in malaria cases between 2015 and 2021 for each state. Now, the specific formula subtracts the cases 2015 from cases in 2021, dividing the result by 2015 and then multiplying it by 100 to get the percentage increase. And the round function is used to round the values to the nearest integer. Now in this line, once again, it simply initiates a new ggplot using the updated malaria 3 dataset, which now contains our increase rate column. This next line, as you see here, adds a layer using the geom_sf function and mapping the fill aesthetic to the increase rate column. And this plots the choropleth map where each state is colored based on its percentage increase rate. Additionally, it also sets the border color of its states to white and adjusts the border size to 0.2. Next, our scale fill continuous function sets the continuous color scale for the fill aesthetic by representing increase rates, ranging from 0 to 70% and transitioning from green or low increase rate to red, which indicates high increase rates. And it also sets specific breaks at these numbers for better visualization. Our geom_sf text function adds text labels to the plot, mapping the label aesthetic to the increase rate column. And this labels each state with its increase rate percentage wrapped to 1 character width for better visualization and sets the text size to 2. Finally, the labs function sets the plot's title as Nigeria malaria increase rate in 2021 compared with 2015. Finally, the theme void function again applies a minimalistic theme to the plot and removes all unnecessary background elements to help focus solely on the map and the data. Thus, overall, the code that we just went over calculates first the percentage increase in malaria cases between 2015 and 2021 for each Nigerian state, and then here we create a choropleth map to visualize and highlight the increase rates, aiding in the analysis and understanding of the spread of malaria over time across different regions of Nigeria. In a choropleth map, while color gradients offer a visual cue to understand the distribution of a variable across regions, adding labels can significantly enhance the clarity of the visualization. And this is especially true when audiences might not be familiar with all geographical boundaries shown. In the case of our malaria dataset, adding state names to the map makes the data more accessible and understandable. So within our code that you've seen here, which is similar to the ones that we've been explaining in depth, we're simply going to fill in our remaining lines. So within our geom_sf function, we're going to fill each state based on a number of malaria cases in 2021, scaled per 10,000. So we've done this before. In order to do that, we're going to call in our cases 2021 column, and to scale it per 10,000, we're going to simply divide these cases by 10,000. In our labs title, we're just going to add in a title for our choropleth map. Here we will choose Nigeria malaria cases in 2021. And for our color scale, we're going to name it cases per 10,000. And again, our scale continuous function simply applies a continuous color scale ranging from green, showcasing low case numbers, to red, which indicates high case numbers. And running that, here in the resulting output, we're able to see a clear and informative map of malaria cases across Nigeria in 2021, with each state labeled for easy reference. Furthermore, visualizations can convey a wealth of information when they incorporate multiple data points in an intuitive manner. So by pairing state names with their corresponding increase rates, we can provide a richer, more detailed view of the data without overwhelming the audience. To delve into this visualization, we want to present a choropleth map showcasing the malaria cases per 10,000 residents across Nigerian states in 2021, with labels that combine state names and their respective increase rates from 2015. So we will do so with the following code chunk. As a reminder, this is nearly the same as the syntax that we've previously seen from the choropleth maps that we've been making throughout the lesson. So in this case, we're simply going to go over the most pertinent lines or new lines that we have not seen thus far. So first off, let's combine the state names and their respective increase rates into a single label using the paste function. So to do that, we're going to call in our malaria 3 dataset, specifying the state name column. And for our second argument, we're going to call in once again our malaria 3 dataset, but in this case, we're going to call in the increase rate column. Then going forward, within the syntax to create our choropleth map, in the geom_sf function, we're going to set our fill aesthetics to be colored by the cases from 2021 per 10,000 residents. And here we're going to add the combined label state name and increase rates to each state with the geom_sf text function within our string wrap function. We're just going to indicate label text by 2. Label text is what we were referring to when we combine the state names and their increase rates up above here. So when we run that, we get the following output. Now, as you can see, this approach allows us to efficiently communicate two important pieces of information: cases per 10,000 and increase rate within the same visualization, whilst keeping the name of states for easy identification, like so. At this point, it's time for our second practice question. Using the concepts that we just learned, we would like for you to create a single choropleth map that showcases the malaria increase rates across different states in Nigeria, with each state labeled by its name. So take your time to read the instructions and understand what is being asked. Pause your screen and indicate your answer in your own RMD file. Now, sometimes you might want to draw attention to a particular area or region on your map without omitting details from the surrounding areas. By using specific graphical elements like larger markers or distinctive colors, you can emphasize certain regions while still showcasing the broader data. To see this in action, we're going to focus on this specific region in Nigeria. First, we're going to calculate our centroid coordinates for labeling. To do so, we're going to use our st_centroid function within our st_coordinates function. Here, we're going to input our malaria 3 dataset, specifying for geometry. And here in this ggplot code, we're simply visualizing our malaria cases with the syntax that we've previously seen in creating basic choropleth maps. And in this step, we're going to overlay a point on the region in order to emphasize it. Now, the size of the point will correspond to the number of cases. To do that within our geom_point function, we're going to indicate our malaria 3 dataset within our subset function, and we're going to indicate our state name to emphasize this region within Nigeria. And within our st_centroid function, we're going to indicate geometry. for the x-axis as well as the y-axis. For the color, we're going to simply choose black, and for the fill of this shape, we would like it to be transparent. Here we're adding labels to each region, which you've seen before, and within our scale continuous function, we're simply going to customize the scale of the size of the emphasized point, and we're going to choose 15 and 20 in this case. And these lines of code should also be familiar to you, wherein we add labels and apply a minimal theme for clarity purposes. In the resulting output, we can see that we were successful in emphasizing this specific region, while the other regions are also displayed with their respective color shading based on malaria cases. Now, overall, this offers a holistic view of the situation across Nigeria, enabling viewers to compare this region with its neighboring counterparts. This approach is invaluable when you wish to spotlight specific details or areas of interest without sidelining the broader dataset, which in turn enriches your data representations. Since creating this map was a little bit more involved than the others, it's perhaps worth it to go back and go through the code chunk in a little bit more detail. As we briefly went over when we were simply filling in our code chunk, this code calculates the centroid coordinates for labeling the regions or states in the dataset malaria 3. Now, it uses this SD centroid function from the SF package to find the centroids of the geometries in the geometry column of the malaria 3 dataset, and then the ST coordinates function extracts the coordinates of these centroids. Moving forward, this line simply initiates a new ggplot object using the malaria 3 dataset. Our next line here adds a layer using the geom_sf function, mapping the fill aesthetic to cases in 2021 per 1,000. And what this does is creates a choropleth map where each region's color intensity represents the number of malaria cases in 2021, normalized by dividing it by 1,000. Here, the scale fill continuous function sets the continuous color gradient from green, indicating low number of cases, to red, which indicates high number of cases for better visualization. Now, these lines overlays a point on the specific region that we've selected using a subset to filter for that region on the choropleth map. Now, the size of the point is based on a number of malaria cases in 2021 and is plotted at the centroid coordinates of that region. And as you see, we've specified this highlight to be black, which creates a black square that you see down below here, with the fill being transparent because, of course, we would like for it to be legible. Now, the geom_sf text function will simply add text labels to the plot, labeling each region with its state name and setting the text size to 3. Now, our scale size continuous function customizes the scale of the size of the emphasized point of our target region for better visibility and sets the range of the size. Now, our handy labs function simply sets a title for our choropleth map alongside a subtitle and labels for the legends, as we see here. And lastly, we've applied our theme void function for a minimalistic theme to the plot and remove unnecessary background elements, focusing solely on the map and the data. Mapping and visualizing specific data points on a geographical map can provide crucial insights, especially when dealing with epidemiological data. To see this, let's delve into the code that we see below in order to understand the processes and the visualization we're aiming to achieve using, once again, malaria prevalence for Nigeria. In this code chunk, we're going to be using the getPR function from the malaria Atlas package to access the parasite rate, or PR, which is an essential indicator of malaria prevalence. This first argument is a parameter specifying Nigeria's country code, and this argument fetches data for both malaria species. Now that you understand the first line, let's fill in the remaining lines within this code chunk. Within our filter function, we're simply going to filter out records with missing PR values. We're going to use the isNA function specifying for PR. In this line, we're going to remove any rows with missing longitude or latitude. So drop NA specifying for longitude and latitude. Now this line converts the processed data into a spatial data frame wherein it specifies the columns containing longitude and latitude as coordinates, as seen here. And it sets the coordinate reference system, or CRS, to this number, which represents geographic coordinates in decimal degrees. So let's go ahead and run that chunk. Now that the chunk has successfully fetched malaria prevalence data for Nigeria, we can move on to set up our chloropleth map. Since you should now be familiar with the following code, let's simply fill in the missing lines. Within our geom_sf function, we're going to call in our shapefile, which if you recall was named nga_admin1. And here we're going to be adding points for each testing location with the geom_sf function. For size, we're going to indicate examined with the color being positive. And in this case, we're going to be using the Nigeria PR dataset that we called in up above here, wherein we fetched data for Nigeria for both malaria species. So this is what Nigeria PR is referring to. And we're just going to add our labels, our title, subtitle, and associated labels for our legend, adding additional labels for the axes. And as we saw in the previous lesson, we're going to be using specific tools from the Geospatial package to add cartographic elements such as a north arrow and a scale bar to make the map more informative. In running that, we see that the code was able to generate a chloropleth map showing the administrative boundaries of Nigeria and overlaying the points representing malaria testing locations where the size of each point corresponds to the number of people examined and the color indicates whether the test was positive. Additionally, it includes orientation information, like the north arrow, a scale bar for enhanced visualization of the data set. The map that we created here is a little bit different than the maps that we've previously seen wherein the whole region was colored. And this is simply because within our geom_sf function, we did a few different things. In our case, the geom_sf function adds points to the plot representing testing locations for malaria in Nigeria. The size aesthetic is mapped to the number of people examined, and the color aesthetic represents whether the test was positive. And here, as we've already explained, this simply uses data from the Nigeria PR dataset, which we loaded up above here previously. And finally, we are brought to our last practice question, which of course is also a challenge. Using the concepts that we just went over, we would like for you to create a new visualization that represents positive rate, or the number of positive cases divided by the number examined for each location. And we would also like for you to modify the size of the points to reflect the positive rate. Take your time to understand what is being asked. Pause your screen and indicate your answer in your own RMD file. And that brings us to the end of our lesson. Let's take this opportunity to go over the learning objectives we introduced in the beginning. So by the end of this lesson, you should now be able to incorporate continuous data indicators into choropleth maps for enhanced granularity. You should be able to effectively overlay state names into choropleth maps to ensure clarity and readability, as well as seamlessly integrate state names with increased rates on maps without compromising legibility, apply techniques to accentuate specific regions on a map whilst retaining the overall context. And finally, you should be able to determine optimal point placement strategies and integrate them effectively into geospatial visualizations. Overall, geospatial data visualization is much more than just plotting data on a map. It's really about narrating a story that's rooted in both location and space. Now, this lesson delved into a layers-based narrative approach, ranging from the importance of clear annotation as well as the integration of diverse data sets for richer understanding. Well, that's it for today. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next lesson.
For more resources, visit our website, where you can track your progress, access interactive quizzes and lesson notes, and connect with our teachers and other learners like you. And if you'd like a more guided experience, we also offer live online bootcamps with expert help. So join us at thegraphcourses.org to start your learning journey today.